What happened here? Was this a story of overspending? Everyone's making so much about $64 million for Democrats to redraw congressional maps. Alex, if you're like me, and I do live in Northern Virginia, my phone's been melting from the text spam. I can't turn on the radio without hearing Barack Obama. All for this issue to redistrict the state. And it looks like Democrats have won with as little as 51.5%. Republicans are wondering if money could have made a difference.
It may have. However, the silver lining for Republicans is that we were outspent by so much, and yet people didn't love what the Democrats were trying to do. So I think it does show that there are Republicans in Virginia. Independent voters are up for grabs in Virginia. Democrats are going to have to spend a ton of money in Virginia to win those seats.
Yeah, okay.
And the House remains very competitive this fall.
Interesting. So when you hear about, there's a local impact, of course, or a statewide impact. There are at least 4 Republican lawmakers who are going to be in for a real fight now, right? You wouldn't want to be Jen Kiggins this morning. But then the national score is important as well, because we've got a lot of states here. President Trump started this with Texas. Gavin Newsom followed with California. The snowball effect has brought us through Virginia. If Florida does not act, and apparently it may be about to, Democrats are up 1 on the national scorecard. Does that actually matter when it comes to voting in November?
I think it's too soon to say. However, it's pretty clear that neither party is getting much of an advantage out of the redistricting fights. We basically took a lot of solid red districts and made them more purple in order to have more purplish reddish districts in places like Texas, and the Democrats did the opposite in blue states. At the end of the day, it probably nullifies itself nationally. If there's a wave election, if the Democrats do very, very well, as the polling right now indicates they're likely to do, this is not going to be the difference maker. If it's a close election, it'll probably be a close election, and this, I don't think that the way the district fight has worked out, it's going to be decisive.
So if this is just a wash, then it's the definition of dummy mandering, right? This was a complete waste of time.
It could be. I mean, we do redistricting every 10 years. If we're now going to do it every 5 years, so be it. I don't know that according to this exercise, this is not going to undermine our democracy.
Right. Sure. It's not going to, although some worry that it erodes confidence in our elections. Is that something that's
having more swing districts, more closely fought districts, like these districts in Virginia, like I'm not saying I like what the Democrats did in Virginia by any means, but I think nationwide, the fact that we now have a lot more purple districts than we did a year ago, not a bad thing for democracy.
Fascinating. I'd love to ask you about some of the national issues that we're dealing with here and how Republicans are messaging the affordability issue when we've still got $4 a gallon gas, and it looks like this is going to be going on for a while. This standoff in the strait, even if we have a ceasefire, is the essence of this. Oil prices are rising today. Everybody's looking at a 4 handle, if not higher, depending on where you live, at least on the coasts. I realize it gets different in some states. Alex, what are you telling candidates who have to make sense of this on the stump?
Well, the election is not today. The election is 6 months from now. I think, as we've seen in the last 2 weeks, there's going to be massive swings in the oil markets. Any given day, they could swing 10, 20%, as we've seen in the last couple of weeks. So I don't read too much into what gas costs today, what oil costs today. That said, you got to recognize people are hurting. And I think Biden got in trouble because he didn't show empathy for the how people were suffering under inflation. I think it's important that Republicans, I think it's important for all politicians to show empathy, to say that, look, I understand that gas prices are too high right now and this is hurting you. And then you got to go on offense. Look, there's a lot of things that Democrats have done to make gas more expensive in this country. There's things they continue to do, like oppose permitting reform, which you and I have talked about. I think you can go on offense saying this is what I'm going to do beyond ending the war in the Mideast to help long-term reduce energy prices, reduce gas prices. It,
of course, makes a greater challenge for the Federal Reserve to manage interest rates, or at least cut interest rates, as the president wants, when you've got energy prices surging like this. And this is a big part of the conversation for Kevin Warsh up on Capitol Hill yesterday. We're going to hear in a moment from Elizabeth Warren, part of her conversation with Kayleigh Lyons about Fed independence. But I'm wondering your thoughts on this issue. This isn't, I mean, it's a kitchen table issue, but it's not something that people talk about at the kitchen table. The Federal Reserve is kind of this unknown thing for a lot of Americans, but the president needs to get a new chair. Based on what you saw yesterday, the blockade, if you will, from Tom Tillis, do you see this resolving itself in weeks or months or what?
I do. I don't think Senate Republicans, especially if the Senate is in play this fall, are not going to want to fill this seat. I think
he could be confirmed.
I don't think Tillis has policy issues with the nominee.
Yeah.
And so I'm optimistic that he will end up being confirmed. It just might get drawn out for a little bit. But I think while the Fed is not an election issue,
yes,
interest rates are.
Yeah.
And Trump is right about that the high interest rates are very unpopular with voters. They see it when they try to get a new mortgage, they see it in their credit card bills. And so I think to the extent that he can bring down gas prices and he can bring down interest rates between now and the election, both of which are possible, will have a huge impact on the president's approval rating, on Republicans' approval rating, and ultimately who controls the House and Senate next year.
Do you worry about Fed independence, or is this pearl clutching by Democrats?
Look, I think the nominee did a really good job yesterday
Yeah.
saying that he wasn't going to be run by the White House. And I think once you're in that job, you have a lot of people talking. I know governors that are on the board, and they have a lot of independence. And they listen to a lot of their stakeholders, businesses in their communities, local political leaders in their communities. They get a lot of data, and sure, they also hear what the White House says. But at the end of the day, they want to do the right thing.
Right.